I moved 30 lines onto a different carrier to save $3 a line a month, $90 a month, about $1,100 a year. None of that arithmetic was wrong. What the spreadsheet had no column for was 2 evenings at a bench with 30 open phones and the 11 lines that went back to the old carrier inside 5 weeks. I run real Android phones on a rack in Singapore, a bit over 100 of them, each with a physical carrier SIM sitting in the tray. I run mobile proxy lines on the same kind of hardware. So I buy SIMs from more than one carrier here, and I have moved stock between them more than once. This is the version of that job nobody quotes you for. What actually changes when the SIM changes? On the invoice, a carrier move is a line item. Same phones, same rack, same power, a cheaper SIM each month. On the shelf, it is every device on that shelf changing identity in the same afternoon. The first thing that changes is the block of addresses your traffic comes out of. Your device stops appearing from one carrier's ranges and starts appearing from another one's, and it inherits whatever that range has been doing for the last few years. How that gets scored is a whole topic of its own. The short version is that you do not carry your own history across with you. The second is the SIM itself. The operator name is one of the things an app can read straight off a device, sitting right next to the hardware identifiers, and the device that has reported one carrier for a year now reports a different one. The third is the one people never think about until they are already in it. The two networks do not behave the same when they are busy. The network at 8 in the evening, throughput at 3 in the morning tells you nothing. Every carrier here looks excellent at 3 in the morning. The number that matters is what the network does when the whole country is on it. Rintishamji, Rimfans ising if Puntrium Vintaambivas. Another dropped by more than half, between 7 and 10. And the phones on it would fall from 5G back to 4G and just sit there until midnight. On a fleet doing unattended work in the evening, that is not really a speed problem. It turns into a timeout problem. A job that finishes in 11 seconds at noon takes 40 at 9, and something upstream gives up on it long before the phone does. That failure does not look like a carrier problem in your logs. It looks like your own script being flaky, which is why people chase it for weeks. How a carrier treats a device that never sleeps. The other real difference is what the network does with a device that talks constantly. A person's phone is idle most of the day. It wakes up, does something for a few seconds, goes quiet again, and it does that in a rhythm that follows somebody's actual life. A phone running scripted work has a shape no human phone has, and the carrier's equipment reacts to that shape whether or not anyone at the carrier ever looks at it. What you see is idle sessions being torn down sooner on one network than on the other, and the address on the far side of that teardown not always being the one you had before. One carrier handed my devices the same address for days at a stretch. Another gave a new one most times the device reconnected. Neither of those is broken. They are different engineering decisions, and both are defensible. But if your work depends on holding an address across a session, one of those two carriers is useless to you, and the price sheet will never tell you which one. And you cannot find any of this out from a desk. The coverage map, the speed test everybody quotes, the numbers the salesperson reads to you, all of those describe a person walking around town with a phone in their pocket. None of them describe a handset bolted to a shelf in one room, parked on one tower, doing the same thing at the same hour every day of the week. The part that is physical, here is the cost nobody puts in the model. This is a hardware job. Somebody opens every single device. 100 phones is 100 SIM trays, 100 pokes with an ejector pin, 100 power cycles, and 100 checks that the thing came back up on the network you meant. I work on 20 minutes a device now, all in. That covers the swap, the reboot, the check, and the 1 in 10 where something is wrong and you go back to it. At 30 devices, that is 10 hours. I have also bent a tray and killed a slot doing this, which turned a $200 handset into spare parts over $3 a month, and checked the network afterwards rather than the SIM. A line can register perfectly and have no data provisioned on it yet. I have had SIMs come up on voice and sit there with no data until the next day, which is fine if you know, and a very confusing evening if you do not. None of it starts on the day you decide, either. New SIMs take time to activate. One carrier here has taken about 3 days on a batch for me, so you are ordering stock before you have touched a single phone and paying for it while it sits in an envelope on the bench. So before any of it, run the arithmetic in the other direction. 10 hours of somebody's time, plus the handset you are statistically going to break, against $90 a month. That gap needs the better part of a year just to get level with itself. Everything moving at once is a pattern. The second unbudgeted cost lands on the accounts rather than the hardware. If 100 devices sat on one network for a year, and every one of them is on a different network by Wednesday lunchtime, that is a coordinated change. Every account living on those devices watches its network move in the same hour. Individually, each one is ordinary, because people do change carriers. What people do not do is change carriers in a block of 100 on a Tuesday in one building. I cannot prove what any platform does with that signal, and I am not going to pretend I can. What I can tell you is that I have never regretted spreading a move across 2 weeks, and I have regretted doing one in an afternoon. Move a few first and run both. So the method is boring, and it is the part of this I am actually confident about. Move 5, 10 if the fleet is big. Leave everything else exactly where it is and run both carriers side by side for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks because you need a weekend and a handful of evening peaks in the sample. 3 days on a new SIM tells you it registered and nothing else, and measure the right thing. Average speed is the wrong number. What you want is the failure rate on the job you actually run. How often a session dies halfway through. How often the address moves under you. How often a human has to go and touch something. That is a comparison. What most people do is migrate and then hope. And hoping has no control group in it. Running both means paying both. And that is where people flinch. 2 weeks of overlap on 30 lines at about $10 a SIM is roughly $150 for the answer. I think that is the cheapest money in the entire exercise, and it is the first thing that gets cut. There is a wrinkle with a rented fleet, which is that you cannot move a customer twice for fun. So the small batch comes off my own devices and my own lines, the ones I keep back for exactly this, and nobody else finds out an experiment happened. Then write down which device is on which network. A text file is plenty. Device, carrier, SIM, the date it moved, and who is on it. That sounds like paperwork, right up until the night something is failing, and the only question that matters is which network that particular phone is on. I have stood in front of a rack, not knowing, and working it out took longer than the actual fix did, then stagger the rest. A handful a day over a fortnight. It cost you nothing extra because you are opening every device anyway, and it flattens the pattern out at the same time. What actually justifies a move? There are only a few reasons I think are good enough, and one of them gets leaned on far too hard. Failures you have measured. Not one bad Tuesday. Weeks of one carrier being worse at the specific thing you do. With numbers you collected yourself sitting behind the claim. Capacity you cannot get. They will not sell you more lines, or the SIM stock genuinely is not there, or the account is capped. That one is simple enough. You cannot buy what somebody will not sell you. And price, which is where nearly everybody gets it wrong. $3 off a $10 SIM reads like 30%. The SIM is one part of what a line costs. Behind it sits hardware depreciating at about $1.50 a month, plus power, plus rack space, plus the 10 hours you are about to spend with an ejector pin. So my position, and it is the one people argue with me about. Most carrier moves get decided on the monthly line price and regret it on the failure rate. Price is the easiest number on the page to see and the least useful one on the list. The 11 that came back to the 30. The move itself went fine. Every line registered, every phone came back up. And for about 10 days I thought I had found free money. Then the tickets started, and they all had the same shape. Work that ran clean at 2 in the afternoon, failing between 8 and 11 at night. The customers on those lines run in the evening, because that is when the things they are working against are awake. I had tested in the afternoon because that is when I was at the bench. I moved 11 of them back. That is 11 more devices opened, 11 more reboots, and 11 customers who now knew I had changed something underneath them without telling them first. The saving that survived was $57 a month across 19 lines, against something like 15 hours of my own time and a handset I had to strip for parts. I do not think it netted out for 8 months. The honest reading is that I decided it on a number that could not answer the question I was asking. A price sheet has no failure rate printed on it, and the limit, because there is one. I cannot tell you the carrier that lost that comparison is worse. I tested one workload, 30 devices, one building, about 6 weeks. A different job at a different hour on a different part of the island could come out the other way, and I would not know. That is the actual reason I think you have to run your own small batch rather than borrowing mine. If you would rather rent phones that already sit on real Singapore carrier SIMs and let somebody else spend the evenings with an ejector pin, everything is at cloud.one. Subscribe for more on cloud phones.